man, you must comb through with a fine tooth comb. You must put under the examination of a microscope, put it on a petri dish, and look behind it, look through it, look around it, because what they have done is become the monopoly. And people don't realize that if somebody wants to start a church, and the Bible tells us the borrower is slave to the lender, how do a lot of these mega places, these mega churches, Sunday Sun worship organizations that report to the Vatican, that are following the guidance of the Roman Catholic Church, where do they get loans to build these things from if they're not begging the people for building funds? Man, the Bibles that we have today have been rebranded, repackaged, stuff that has been sewn into them that's not the word of Yah. And this is what I want people to examine, because you might be looking at your Bible saying this is the word of God, and the word of the Most High Yah was in its purest form before the Gentiles got a hold of it. There's a misconception that the New Testament was originally written in Greek, but etymology will show you that that's not the case. When we look at the canonization of the Bible, how did this come about? How did it get the name the Bible? How did it, go from ta Biblia to Bible? Why are why is the New Testament and the Old Testament separated? How did that divider between the old and the new get there? A lot of people don't know the reasons for this, and I know it will be a shocker when I say that what you're reading, if you're reading a NIV, NLT, KGV, the list goes on. Man, this stuff has been translated by Gentiles, and a lot of which are heathens, because they have come up and given you something contrary to what actually was written. Man, there's parts of, I've got videos on this channel, man, there's parts of the Bible where I'm talking about half or whole chapters were completely inserted and added to give the ending to the original text that the Gentiles wanted. There's completely, when you look at certain parts of the Bible, you can look back and realize that they weren't a part of the original manuscripts. They weren't a part of the scrolls. This stuff has been added into, and people are taking this as this is the word. But this is why the Most High Yah says, study to show thyself approved, rightly dividing to separate the word. Now, when we look at Genesis chapter 10, man, it goes to show you, and I recommend you read Genesis 9 and Genesis 10 to gain some understanding when we look at the isle of the Gentile. So we're going to read 1 through 5. Now, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus, And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Donaman. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their family, in their nations. So when you look at this, the isle of the Gentiles is Europe. This is where they migrated to, or this is where they ended up. And we're talking about post-flood. You know, man, one of the grandsons of Noah is Ashkenaz. And that's one community that you have been brainwashed to think that, okay, this is them. But these Jews that stem from Gomer, Ashkenaz, are not from the tribe of the Yahudim. It's very important. You've got the Yahudim, you've got Yahuda, you've got Judah, you've got Jews, and then they gave you Jewish. And anytime ish is added on to the end of something, it makes it vague. So when we're looking at Europe, you know, now we're talking about the Vatican. We're talking about the headquarters. So when we look at who just died recently, it was the Pope. And people don't know the lineage of the Pope, the papacy. And when you look at it, the Pope and the past popes are Gentiles with Jewish ties, with Jewish association. And when you look at why the Vatican is set up in Europe, you know, in Rome, when you look at the Jewish community, Ashkenaz, grandson of Noah, this is all the Isle of the Gentile, biblically. Genesis 10 shows you that. So they're not two separate groupings of people. You know, they just split off to give you two different perspectives. Okay, when we look at the Vatican City, it was established as an independent state in 1929 through Lateran Treaty, which recognized the sovereignty of the Pope and Holy See. Okay. The Vatican history as the seat of the Catholic Church began in the 4th century with the construction of the Basilica over St. Peter's tomb in Rome. 4th century, very monumental. 4th century, very monumental to what you know about religion today. Okay? When we look at the 4th century, this is a time period from 301 CE to 400 CE. And today I'm just going to showcase you a lot of what went on during the 4th century and why this headquarters is against you fearing the Most High Yah and keeping his commandments. You know, they're the ones responsible for screening the doctrine, translating it, changing things that the book tells us we're supposed to do. Okay, so the canonization of the Bible, meaning the process of officially recognizing a collection of sacred writings, occurred over time and involved different stages and perspectives. Okay. The Jewish Bible, or Tanakh, is believed to have been largely finalized by the 2nd century BCE. So when you think about that, man, that is after Messiah. And when you think about this right here, Judaism, you know, these are Gentiles. that are even involved in this. You know, the Bible, both Old and New Testament, underwent a process that culminated in the 4th century with the councils like those of Rome, Hippo, and Carthage formally recognized and established the 73 books of the Catholic Bible. This canon was further reaffirmed by later councils, including the Council of Trent. Okay. The New Testament canonization involved a longer period of debate and discussion with the early church. Different lists of books were circulated and eventually through councils like Rome 382 AD, Hippo 393 AD, and Carthage 397, and a consensus emerged on the 27 books of the New Testament that are still accepted by most Christian denominations. Very important, because this is the hijacking of a book that was written, the Messiah, Hebraic, Israelite, Semitic people. You look at his lineage. This is the hijacking of turning everything from the beginning of the book and making it reflect that of Gentile culture. Every name throughout the book, you go behind that name and you'll find out, when you look at the etymology of these names, man, they've given them, names of Gentiles. And if somebody mispronounced your name, you would correct them, right? But we have been led to believe, okay, it's okay to change the name and give them the names that we want, but who is the one dominating this? This is the Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, particularly through Vatican councils, played a significant role in shaping and affirming the biblical canon, which is a list of books considered inspired and authoritative. Now, who gave them the authority to determine what is authoritative? What is actually the word of the Most High Yah, and why are there so much changes that came about after their involvement? And what you'll realize is, man, there wasn't any Israelite presence when it comes to these councils that were involved in the canonization of the Bible. What you have is Jewish, those of Judaism, and then you have these Gentiles of the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, all of them coming from Japheth, the Isle of the Gentile, determining how they can use what was written on behalf of a Semitic Eastern agricultural people and put a Western spin on it. Very important. So the Vatican is located in the city of Rome, but is not part of Rome. It is an independent city, state, and enclave, and the smallest country in the world. The Vatican is surrounded by Rome. Okay. Rome is considered Europe. So we got to look at geographical location. Where did they set up their headquarters? Where did these Gentiles set up their headquarters? The Vatican City, as a sovereign state, controls its own territory and has sovereignty over a small area within Italy. Okay. Just give you a little bit of background. When we look at Trinity doctrine, man, during the time of Messiah, the disciples, even Moses writing of Messiah, man, we hear no mention of this Trinitarian doctrine. Where did this come from? This is nothing more than something pushed out from the Roman Catholic Church, once again, to deceive the minds of the people. The Trinity doctrine, which states that God exists as one being in three co-equal persons, that's some bipolar some schizophrenic stuff, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the roots in both early Christian writings and philosophical concepts within its form articulation come from church councils. Which councils? The councils that I've been telling you about. While the Bible doesn't explicitly use the word Trinity, the concept emerged from discussions about the nature of Yahushua and the Ruach HaKodesh. So when we think about this, let's look at this. The Council of Nicaea 325 AD convened to address the Arian controversy, which disputed the divinity of the Messiah, formally declared that the Messiah was of the same substance as the Father, laying a crucial foundation for Trinitarian theology. So this stuff came about 4th century, well after. Messiah didn't want us focused on no doggone Trinity, but this is something that these Gentiles cooked up to deceive you. Same thing like the rapture. Let's keep going. Okay, so when I say, man, every Christian is a Catholic, every Catholic is a Christian, you have to understand why I say that. Because the book tells us to keep one day, but somehow everybody has been brainwashed and programmed to keep another day. Sunday became the Lord's Day for Christians gradually, with the practice of meeting for worship on that day dating back to apostolic times. And what they're talking about is what they use to say that is bring your tithes to the storehouse. And the storehouse is not a church. Etymology will show you that. While some Christians may have continued to observe both Saturday, the Jewish making something vague, Sabbath, the Sabbath wasn't given to the Jews. You can go back and read Genesis through Genesis, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Exodus. Go back and read Exodus chapter 20 and see if you're going to see anything about Moses speaking to the Jews. But this is another when it comes to indoctrination, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, pushes out this stuff to brainwash people. Okay. And Sunday in early centuries, the designation of Sunday as the Christian Sabbath gained prominence over time. Always wasn't what is. It's not what's in the book. A significant step in this process was the legislation of rest on Sunday by Emperor Constantine the Great in 321 AD, aiming to provide time for worship. Wait a minute. The Most High Yah already gave us a set apart time for worship. Why do they want to change it? This is why I say they have a monopoly on religion. They are gatekeepers. Okay, let's keep going. The Vatican City is home to St. Peter's Basilica, a church that is considered one of the most significant places of worship in Christendom. A lot of people don't understand. When I say Christendom, that's an actual term. Okay. However, it is one of the smallest independent country in the world and headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church. This is a headquarters. The Vatican has its own government, has its own infrastructure. Okay. When we look at global economics and finances, you have people like John the Healer, best friend of Oprah Winfrey, going to visit the popes at the Vatican. You look at some of the stuff that these people are caught up in, background checks. Okay. The Vatican has one of the largest banks. It's called the Institute for the Works of Religion. I wonder if they're following the ways of Torah. And it's also known as the Vatican Bank. The IOR is located within the Vatican City and functions as a financial institution for religious institutions and institutions within the Vatican, as well as for supporting papal initiatives. So when we think about this, I told you, Even though the book says the borrower is a slave, or servant to the lender, this is why you have some of these churches today that they're not starting off small and debt free. Man, they're taking out loans, and people don't even know about the banking system for churches. And this structure was set in place all by the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church. Okay. The Vatican, as a seat of the Roman Catholic Church, plays a key role in establishing, maintaining the liturgical calendar, including the celebration of Easter. Think about this. The Vatican has historically been involved in determining the date of Easter, reflecting the Council of Nicaea's decision in 325 to observe it on the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox. Man, go look in the Torah and see, does this line up with how we're supposed to keep the Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread? In 1582, the Vatican, with Pope Gregory VIII, adopted the Gregorian calendar, which altered the calculations of Easter's date in Western culture, while the Eastern Orthodox Church retained the Julian calendar, leading to different Easter dates between the two traditions. Today, the Vatican continues to guide the Roman Catholic Church celebration of Easter, and Pope Francis has publicly expressed his desire for unity in the celebration of Easter among all Christians, urging a shared date for the holiday. Who gave these people authority to change what the Most High Yah had already done? So what you have is the book wasn't written on behalf of them. And when you look at the workings of Paul, people don't even understand that Shaul was still ministering to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because when the book says they were scattered to the four corners of the earth, was there a corner that they weren't scattered to? So when we look at this, it's very important to understand that the reason they've changed all the names to reflect that of Gentile, culture, the reason the worldly holidays don't line up with the biblical holy days is for the purpose of they're culturally different. They're culturally in opposition. Eastern and Western culture don't have any similarities, man. They're in opposition to one another. This is why this is important. And their main goal is, okay, man, we're going to become one of the largest financial institutions to get people to do something that's contrary to the book. And ultimately, what they're doing is teaching you not to fear the Most High Yah and teaching you to violate his commandments. You look at, okay, when did all this symbolism, all these crosses, you look at you got to look at the Pope. If my community were to wear the same cross pennant he wear, oh, you some type of thug, you think you're a rapper, look at the Pope. Where did all this come from? Okay, let's see. The Catholic Church, in its early efforts to convert pagans, hold on now, to convert pagans, strategically incorporated elements of pagan festivals into its own calendar and rituals. This was the way to ease the transitions for new coverts by associating Christian holidays with familiar pagan celebrations. This stuff, this is information that's out here. Nowhere in the book did you see the Messiah, tell Shaul, or no instruction was given to Shaul to adopt some of these pagan ways. If anything, you read the opposite. Follow not the way of the heathen. See, the Roman Catholic Church was something that took, because what Antiochus did in the Maccabean period, First Maccabees chapter 1, was he tried to kick this thing. But during the Maccabean period, there was a lot of war, a lot of conflict, a lot of battle. So here comes the implementation and standing up of the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church. This is when it actually took. Okay. This is why a lot of the Christian observances when it comes to what they celebrate, it's different than what's in the book. It all stems from the Roman Catholic Church, from the Vatican. You know, when you look at their artwork, uh, when you look at their artwork and you look at the Torah, what is considered sin, man, there's a lot of sinful artwork. This is why their artwork has so much depiction of orgies and stuff that if you was laid up today doing would be child molestation, child endangerment. These are the people that's controlling the information that goes out. I've often told people, man, you know, you cannot go to anything that has been defiled by, you know, Romans and Catholic and get truth, because their whole agenda was to give you something different. Their whole agenda was to give you something. The book says, remember the Sabbath. They got you remembering Sunday. You know, if you don't understand what I'm saying, man, check out my Sabbath day teaching yesterday where I walked the dog on this. But people think that, okay, when you look at all of your movies, when you look at your literature, when you look at your artwork, this is why everything depicts Gentiles. And the portion of Paul's ministry, you know, and Paul was he said, follow me as I follow Hamashiach. So Paul wasn't doing nothing different. It's not that long. It's not that long compared to 2,000 years of Eastern Semitic agricultural, you know, Israelite lineage throughout the book, throughout the front of the book. This is why they had to put that divider there. This is why you read about the New Testament in the Old Testament, because they had to figure out, okay, where can we put this divider at? Where can we put this blank page to cause a separation? Front of the half of the book for the Jewish community, those of Judaism. Back half of the book is for Christians, Catholic, Baptist, Apostolic, you know, Pentecost. It's for, like, people can't see it. Their main goal, you know, when you seeing all of these optics and all of these different antics, man, their main goal was to get you to violate the will of the Most High Yah, to keep his commandments. And you go back and look at the history of heathens. Like I said, to the Maccabean period, the Roman Catholic Church didn't do nothing but pick up where Antiochus left off. And globally today, man, this is who is pushing this stuff everywhere, pushing this delusion, this deception, this different message. I guarantee you, man, every time you watch a movie, you know, if you want funding for a Christian movie, if you want funding for a Catholic movie, man, as long as you put certain things in there that support their agenda, they'll give you some funding, because they know it will brainwash people. But if you want some support, saying, hey, I want to put out something that actually is a depiction of what we see in the book, you ain't gonna get no funding. And this is why I tell people, man, you have to examine everything that they have touched. Everything that they have touched. Because I've given you the history. It shows they adopted pagan ways. When is that ever biblical? Adopting the ways of pagans. Adopting the ways of non-believers. The book tells you, do not be equally yoked. The Roman Catholic Church began formally celebrating Christmas. Let's look. The Roman Catholic Church began formally celebrating Christmas on December 25th in 336. 4th century again. 4th century is monumental. But you don't see this stuff nowhere in the book. This was during the reign of Emperor Constantine, the first Christian Roman Empire, according to Britannica. While celebrations of Christ's birth, there was a celebration of his birth, but it wasn't a feast day. wasn't a feast day. He didn't tell you to celebrate his birth and keep it as a perpetual feast. But what they did was adopt the structure of pagan festivals in order to convert pagans. And it's like, so they weren't really trying to get the children of Israel, who Moses was speaking to, trying to get them in proper alignment. They weren't doing the will of the Messiah when Messiah says, I come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But what they were trying to do is gain global domination. Why would you want to convert a pagan? If they already got their wicked beliefs, why would you want to convert them? So you can gain dominance. You can have strength in numbers. You can have more heathens pushing the message. And this is the gatekeepers, man. I encourage you to do your own independent research of the Vatican, and you'll realize, man, that there was no Israelite presence at the seat of the table when they was cooking this stuff up, because we would have said, why are you changing the names? Why do you want to change the name of the Messiah from Yahshua? Why do you want to change it to Iesus? We don't have no Iesus or anything close to that in our Hebraic language or in Aramaic, which was the language of the Messiah. See, when you don't have the right people at the table, man, you can come up with a whole new agenda. Come up with a whole new agenda, a whole new program. And this is what's taken over the world. You know, as I say, man, when you have people out there that's lost, meaning they read the Bible, but they don't study the Bible, rereading the same stuff you read before don't make it studying. You got to examine. But when you examine what's in the book and start looking behind it, start lining it up with history, let's get to the etymology. Let's see what was taking place. Your average person, man, your average Christian account does not want to do that. You know, you start looking in, okay, when did this Bible college and seminary school, all of this stuff, man, this is stuff all stood up by them, by these heathens. You got people now thinking you can't teach the word unless you done been to one of these doggone cemetery schools, and it'll be the death of you, because they're going to teach you according to the workings of the heathens, not off that Torah, because they've shut you off. That's for that Jewish community. And I've told you, when you add ish to something, you're making it vague. How many people you see walking around saying, I'm Caucasianish, I'm Blackish, I'm Asianish, I'm Indianish, I'm Mexicanish? But yet, people take the bait, hook, line, and sinker when it comes to these Gentiles calling themselves Yahudim. And Revelations chapter 2, verse 9, Revelations chapter 3, verse 9 tells you who they are: the synagogue of Satan. Man, all of your handlers, this is why you hear, man, you won't hear any of your major figures. And when I say major figures in Western Christianity, none of them are on a level like the Pope. None of them on that level. But the reason you're not going to hear any prominent Western figures of Christianity ever speak to the history of any of this is because, man, they're under the structure of the Roman Catholic Church. You're never going to hear of them speak to anything. Like, you're never going to hear your Joel Osteens, your T.D. Jakes, your Joyce Myers, your Stephen Furtick, your Michael Todd, your Benny Hinn, your Creflo. You're never going to hear anything that's going to point to the truth of what happened. You're never going to hear of it. They're going to keep you in deception to keep the business going. This is a business. This is a monopoly on worship. The minute they realize, oh, snap, They got all kind of gold and all kind of precious stuff in the tabernacle. This is when Antiochus went in there and stripped the tabernacle of all its gold and precious stuff. The minute they realize, oh snap, well, these Israelites, they own something, but they not profiting off of it. This is when they cooked up that idea. Okay, now we're gonna make this thing about money. We're gonna have people thinking, okay, these seeds that they was planting, the seed sower that was bearing fruit, the seed. No, we're gonna make them think that seeds is money. Think about it. This is how deep this stuff goes. Man, I encourage people to read and to truly study. Truly study. Pick apart this stuff, line it up, okay? Make sure it's in proper alignment. Because what they have taught you to do is put the old against the new. What they have done is made it seem like Messiah's ministry was Gentile based. Messiah's ministry, like Paul came up with this, he was fundamental in forming Christianity. They come up with so much foolishness that can easily be dispelled by what's in the book and etymology. But I said it again. When we start to look, they gave you Paul. They gave you Peter. Paul is Shaul. Peter is Kepha. How do you get those out of Hebraic name? And then we're going to switch them to Gentile names to make it more marketable amongst our people. Look at how it dominates in Western culture. In Western culture, is trying to push this mess. Why do you think we're always in war with Eastern culture? Think about what I'm saying. Our 20-year war, over 20 years, over 40 years war in Afghanistan and Iraq, that's an Eastern culture. Man, they don't want this Christianity. They know it's diluted. Think about it. But these heathens, these lawless Gentiles that believe the law is done away, but yet they've sold you need to repent. What you repent for? What are you turning from if it ain't sin? What are you changing your mind to walk differently from? Lawless Gentiles, man. They're trying to push the culture of the Gentiles and the heathens in places where it never existed. Never existed. Third world countries. We want to take our heathen traditions over there and use religion. You got to think, man, Africa was slowly broken down by way of Christian missionaries that were traveling on the slave ships. You can look that up. The Christian missionaries, their goal was to brainwash the African leaders to break them down mentally, to get them to adopt the ways of the heathen and be in support of the transatlantic slave trade. You got to understand, man, the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, is something that does not need to be underestimated. Man, they are a threat to righteousness. They don't fear the Most High Yah, don't keep the commandments, while say everything. When the word says, man, they don't heap up words when you pray like the Gentiles do. Come on. So many different instances where we're told not to follow their way. There ain't no form or fashion where we're told their ways are righteousness. But look what they got everybody doing. Following their ways. It all points back to the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church. Closer to Yah Ministries, kicking it gun barrel straight.